had no idea what I was walking into when I accepted the job as Kris Jenner's assistant. At first, it seemed like a dream: luxury, fame, the world of the Kardashians. But what I didn't realize was that the mansion wasn't just a symbol of success. It was a prison, a place where secrets were buried behind every door. What I witnessed behind closed doors wasn't just about business. It wasn't just about fame or fortune. It was something far darker, something terrifying. When I first walked through the doors of Kris Jenner's mansion, I felt like I was stepping into a dream. The luxury, the grandeur, the world of the Kardashians, everything I had imagined. I was ready to be part of it all, ready to work for the most famous family in the world. But as soon as I stepped inside, something felt off. The air was thick with tension. It wasn't just the size of the house or the perfect decor. It was something in the atmosphere, something I couldn't quite place. Kris greeted me with that perfect smile, the one that made everyone feel welcome, like they were the most important person in the room. But when I looked into her eyes, I saw something cold, something calculating. It didn't take long to realize that Kris wasn't just a mother managing her children's careers. She was the one pulling the strings, the one who controlled everything. I followed her through the mansion, trying to shake off the sense of unease. Every room we entered felt colder than the last. Every hallway seemed longer. The house was massive, but there was an eerie quietness that I couldn't ignore. No laughter, no warmth. Just the sound of our footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Kris spoke as if everything was normal, guiding me through my duties and the tasks ahead. But I couldn't stop feeling like there was something darker lurking beneath the surface. The family, everything they had, was built on more than just fame. There was an undercurrent to it all, something I wasn't sure I was prepared for. And then I met Kim. She walked into the room with the same perfection that the world had come to expect. Beautiful, confident, magnetic. But there was something about her that felt distant, cold, as if she wasn't really there, but playing a role she had perfected over the years. I couldn't look away. There was something in her eyes, something I couldn't quite place. She wasn't just the reality star everyone knew. She was something else, something darker. Kris was always near, always watching, guiding Kim with subtle gestures. It was clear that Kris didn't just manage Kim. She was shaping her, molding her, controlling her. The more I watched, the more I felt like I was being pulled into something I couldn't understand. The mansion wasn't just a place of fame and wealth. It was a machine, a cold, calculating machine with Kris at the center, pulling the levers. And I was just one more piece of it, a pawn in her twisted game. I had no idea what I had walked into, but I knew, deep down, that there was no turning back now. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Kris wasn't just building an empire. She was manipulating her children, and I was already caught in the web. Soon, I would learn the truth, and it was far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't long before I started noticing the shift in Kim. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. She was still Kim, right? The same woman who had built an empire, who'd always been polished and poised. But now, there was something off. One day, Kris called me into her office. The usual warmth in her voice was gone, replaced with something more serious, more commanding. "I need you to observe Kim today," Kris said, her eyes sharp as she met mine. "We're going to do something important." I nodded, trying to keep my composure. But I felt that same knot of unease in my stomach again. I'd seen Kim before, of course. She was a star, always confident, always in control. But today, Kris's words felt heavier. Something was different. When Kim walked into the room, I barely recognized her. She was stunning, as always, but there was a coldness to her eyes that wasn't there before. She didn't smile. She barely acknowledged my presence. She simply moved to the center of the room with a precision that was almost mechanical. Kris didn't waste any time. She stepped forward and placed her hands on Kim's shoulders, her voice low but firm. "It's time," Kris said, her words almost a whisper. "You're ready." Kim didn't respond. She didn't move. She just stood there, her body stiff, her gaze empty. It was like she was waiting for something or someone to guide her. I wanted to speak, to ask what was going on, but my voice caught in my throat. I didn't know if I was just witnessing a new side of Kim or if this was something more, something darker. Kris's hands remained on Kim, guiding her. There was no warmth in the way she touched her. It was all so clinical, so controlled. I couldn't help but feel like I was watching a puppet master at work. And Kim was the puppet. "Kim," Kris said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Unlock what's inside you." That was when it happened. Kim's eyes, those cold, distant eyes, seemed to shift. Something clicked in her. It wasn't a physical change, not at first, but there was a shift in her presence. It was as if the room itself had grown colder, like the air had thickened around us. Kim straightened up, her body moving with a new purpose. She was still beautiful, still confident, but now there was something different. There was an intensity in her that hadn't been there before. Her gaze sharpened, like she was suddenly aware of everything around her, every word, every action, every move she made. But it wasn't the usual Kim. This was someone else. Kris smiled, a look of satisfaction crossing her face. "There it is," she said, almost to herself. Kim turned toward me, her eyes piercing through me like a blade. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence between us felt like 1,000 unspoken words. She had become something other. Something that felt like it was no longer fully human. I wanted to speak, to ask what had just happened, but the words wouldn't come. What had Kris done to her? What had she done to herself? This wasn't just Kim anymore. This was something darker, something controlled. And Kris had awakened it. "You see?" Kris asked, turning to me with a knowing look in her eyes. "This is what she's meant to be. This is what she was born for. We just had to unlock it." The assistant's stomach turned. They didn't know what to say, how to respond. Everything they thought they understood about Kim, about this family, had just been shattered. This wasn't about career success or building a brand. This was something else, something far darker. Kim had become something Kris had been shaping all along. She was no longer just a celebrity. She was a weapon, and Kris was the one wielding it. I could feel it. The power, the energy in the air charging the room. And I realized with sudden clarity that Kris had been preparing for this moment for years. She had been preparing Kim to be this powerful. this unstoppable. But now I understood something else. Kris had been preparing me too. I had been a part of it from the beginning, without even realizing. I had been a piece of the puzzle. Kim's transformation wasn't just a step forward for her career. It was the beginning of something much darker, something far beyond anything I had imagined. And now, I was part of it. I couldn't turn back. I was already tangled in Kris's web, and now that I had seen the change in Kim, I knew there was no going back. What Kris had unleashed was just the beginning, and soon I would learn how far her power really went. I couldn't shake what I had seen. Kim wasn't the same. She wasn't just more confident, more driven, she was something else entirely. Every time I looked at her, that coldness in her eyes took my breath away. It wasn't the Kim I had seen on TV or met when I first started working for Kris. This was someone more dangerous, more controlled. And it wasn't just her. The whole house felt different now. It wasn't just that the mansion seemed darker, quieter, almost suffocating. It was the way everyone moved through it, like they were walking through a script. Even the staff seemed robotic, as if they were all playing their parts. I couldn't escape the feeling that something was happening to everyone here, and I was just another player in this twisted game. But what terrified me the most was that I wasn't sure if I even wanted to leave anymore. The pull of Kris's control was like gravity, and no matter how hard I tried to resist, it was impossible to ignore. I had started noticing the way Kris would look at Kim, almost possessively, as if she were admiring her masterpiece. I couldn't understand it at first, but now I saw it more clearly. Kim wasn't just a star. She was something more, and Kris wasn't just shaping her career, she was shaping her soul. It was as if Kris had unlocked something within Kim, something powerful and terrifying. And now, she was watching it grow. One afternoon, I was running errands when I saw Kim walking down the hall, her eyes focused and distant. She didn't acknowledge me at first, but then she turned to look at me, her gaze cutting through me like ice. "Is everything going well?" she asked, her voice smooth, almost too smooth. I nodded, trying to find my voice. "Yeah, everything's fine." Kim's lips curled into a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was calculated, like everything she did now. She wasn't just perfect, she was unreachable, like she was playing a role no one could touch. But as she turned to walk away, I saw it, just for a second, the briefest flicker of something beneath that controlled exterior. A glimpse of the Kim I had first met. I saw it in the way she walked, the way her shoulders tensed. It was as if she were fighting against something she couldn't control. But whatever it was gone before I could understand it. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, Kim was still in there somewhere, fighting to get out. But then I remembered who was standing behind her, who had created this version of Kim. And I realized that Kris wasn't just controlling Kim's career. She was controlling her entire being. She had shaped Kim into something more than a celebrity. She had turned her into a weapon. The more I saw, the more I realized I was seeing less of Kim and more of the thing Kris had built. I couldn't help but think about the house, the mansion that had seemed so glamorous at first. Now it felt like a prison, its walls closing in on me. I could feel it every time I passed by the rooms, every time I saw Kim. There was something wrong here, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. One evening, while preparing Kim for yet another public appearance, I couldn't stop thinking about the change in her. Her face was flawless as usual, but there was something different about the way she stood, the way she spoke. She was no longer just a woman of influence. She was something far more calculated, far more cold. I tried to focus on my work, but the more I observed her, the more I saw the machine behind the perfect image. This wasn't just a woman trying to be perfect for her career. This was a woman who had been shaped into perfection. She was no longer allowed to be anything else. Her personality, her warmth, it was all gone, replaced by this icy version of herself that Kris had crafted. "Are you ready?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Kim didn't look at me. She didn't need to. She simply nodded, her gaze locked on the mirror in front of her. "I've always been ready." The words hit me harder than they should have. They weren't just a statement of confidence. They were a statement of finality. Kim wasn't just playing the part of a successful businesswoman anymore. She had fully become whatever Kris had turned her into. And I was standing there, watching it happen. I wanted to turn away. I wanted to walk out, to forget everything I'd seen, but I couldn't. I was too deep now, too involved. I was just as much a part of this as Kim, as Kris. I was stuck in this world of control, manipulation, and power. And the worst part, I didn't know if I ever really wanted to leave. I had begun to understand just how deep the control went, but the worst part was realizing that Kim's transformation wasn't over. It was only just beginning, and soon I would witness the full extent of Kris's power. And by then, there would be no way out. The more I watched Kim, the more I realized how much she had changed. It wasn't just subtle shifts in her personality anymore. It was deeper. It was darker. There was a coldness in her that I couldn't shake. And every time I thought I'd seen it all, she surprised me with a new layer. Something more chilling than before. At first, it was small things. The way her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. The way her voice had become flat, almost rehearsed, as if every word was carefully chosen. But it wasn't just her demeanor. It was the way she carried herself. She no longer seemed like the Kim the world adored. She was like a machine, a cold, calculating version of herself. And it was starting to terrify me. One evening, I was helping her prepare for another media appearance. This time, the event was a huge one, another step in her ever-growing empire. I'd seen Kim prepare for these events before, but this time felt different. Her usual routine of brushing her hair, putting on makeup, it was all the same. But now, it felt like a performance. Like everything had been reduced to a carefully crafted show for the world. But as she stood in front of the mirror, checking herself one last time, I saw it again. The empty eyes. The blank stare that looked straight ahead, but didn't seem to focus on anything at all. It was like she was looking into a mirror. But it wasn't her she was seeing. It was like she was seeing something else. "Are you ready, Kim?" I asked, trying to sound normal, but my voice wavered, betraying the anxiety I felt. Kim turned to me, her lips curling into a smile. It was the same smile, the one the whole world had fallen in love with, but there was nothing warm about it now. Nothing human. "I'm always ready," she said. Her voice cold, detached. The words felt rehearsed, like she was saying them because she had to, not because she truly believed them. There was a disconnect now. The Kim I had known was gone, replaced by this thing. A perfect, polished version of herself, but empty. Like the lights were on, but nobody was home. And I knew, deep down, I wasn't the only one noticing it. Kris was too. I'd seen the way Kris looked at Kim, a mixture of pride and something else, something darker. It wasn't love, not the way a mother loves her child. No, this was control. This was power. Kris wasn't just managing Kim. She was molding her, shaping her into the person she needed her to be. Someone perfect. Someone who could never be weak. I started to question everything. Was Kim always like this? Was she always destined to become this cold, this calculated? Or had Kris done this to her? Had Kris manipulated her until there was nothing left but the shell of the woman Kim used to be? I tried to push the thoughts away. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe that someone could be so completely molded, so utterly shaped into someone else. But every time I saw Kim, I couldn't shake the feeling that Kris had created her, crafted her, manipulated her into something that wasn't even human anymore. It was one night, after another flawless event, that I saw something that made my blood run cold. I was walking down the hallway, heading to my room, when I saw Kim standing by the window. She was staring out at the night, her posture rigid, her eyes locked on something far off in the distance. For a moment, I thought she didn't see me, but then she turned her head, and those cold, empty eyes locked onto mine. For a brief second, there was a flicker of something, a human emotion, a vulnerability that flashed across her face. It was gone so quickly, I almost wondered if I'd imagined it. But I hadn't. I saw it. "I know what you're thinking," Kim said, her voice flat, as if she were speaking through a mask. "You think something's wrong with me. But really, there's nothing wrong." I froze. How did she know? How could she possibly know? But there it was, that dark, knowing look in her eyes. She wasn't just playing a part. She was convinced that this empty, perfect version of herself was all she needed to be. "Kim," I began, but my voice trailed off. What was I supposed to say? I wanted to ask her if she was okay, if she was still okay, but I knew it wouldn't matter. Kim wasn't Kim anymore. She was a puppet, and Kris was the one pulling the strings. Kim gave a small, cold smile, then turned back toward the window, her shoulders straight, her body poised. It was like I wasn't even there anymore. "Don't worry," she said, without turning around. "This is who I'm supposed to be." The words hit me like a slap in the face. It was as if she were reassuring herself, telling herself that the empty shell she had become was enough, that this was her now. The Kim everyone adored was gone, replaced by someone, something more powerful, but without a soul. I turned to leave, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her what happened to the Kim I used to know, but I knew it was pointless. She was gone, and there was nothing I could do about it. The more I witnessed, the more I realized Kim wasn't the only one changing. Kris had transformed her into something unrecognizable, and now I could feel myself being drawn into that same darkness. I was part of the plan, whether I wanted to be or not. And the worst part, I was starting to wonder if I was as trapped as Kim was. I couldn't get it out of my head. Kim was no longer just a star. She was something else, something terrifying. And the worst part? I was starting to see the changes in myself, too. I had become part of this twisted world, caught in the same web that Kris had spun around her children, around everyone she touched. It started off slow, the way it always does. Small, insignificant things at first. And I'd wake up at odd hours, disoriented, unsure of how I got there. The whispers in the halls seemed louder now, more persistent. Sometimes when I walked through the mansion, I could almost feel the walls leaning in, pressing me towards something I wasn't ready for. I couldn't escape it, no matter how much I wanted to. I was living in a house that felt more like a tomb. The grandeur of the mansion was still there, the shiny floors, the pristine decor, but everything about it felt hollow now, empty, like it was built on a foundation of lies and manipulation. And the more I tried to focus on my work, the more I realized I was just going through the motions. A puppet with no strings left to cut. I couldn't ignore what was happening to Kim, but I couldn't ignore what was happening to me either. I began to notice the way Kris would look at me, differently, like she was waiting for something. Her gaze was never kind, never motherly. It was always cold, calculating, like she was watching me for weaknesses, waiting to see if I would break. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that deep down, I was beginning to want it, wanting to be a part of this world, wanting to see what Kim had become, to understand it. I could feel the pull, the way Kris had manipulated her children, molded them into something perfect. And I was starting to realize that I had been molded too. I was becoming someone else, someone colder, someone who didn't feel as much. And deep down, I wasn't sure I hated it. One night, when I couldn't sleep, I went into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. The mansion was dead quiet, the kind of silence that felt suffocating. I passed by the grand hallway and saw Kim standing there, staring at something in the distance. She didn't move when I stopped to look at her. There was no warmth in her eyes, no recognition of me standing there. "Kim?" I called out, my voice barely more than a whisper in the silence. She turned slowly, her eyes locking onto mine with that same unsettling intensity. It was as if she were seeing right through me, like she didn't even see me anymore. "I don't need your sympathy," she said, her voice flat, distant. It wasn't the Kim I had first met, the one who laughed, joked, and made everyone feel like they were her friend. No, this was someone else, someone cold, someone disconnected from the person she used to be. "I'm not trying to give it," I replied, my throat tight. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to reach her. This wasn't the woman I had worked for. This wasn't the Kim I had admired. Kim didn't say anything more. She just stared at me, her eyes blank, and then turned away, walking down the hall with a grace that seemed almost too perfect. I watched her go, my chest heavy, the weight of it all crushing me. I had been watching her transformation for weeks, but now, as I stood there in the hallway, it hit me harder than it ever had before. Kim wasn't just a product of her success. She wasn't just a woman driven by ambition. She was nothing but a shell, a vessel, a perfect creation molded by Kris's hand. And now that she had been activated, no, unleashed, there was no going back. I felt the same pull, the same darkness creeping in on me. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, to get out, to escape this world. But every time I thought about it, I realized something. I couldn't leave. I was already part of it. The mansion had become my prison, and Kris had turned me into another one of her creations, whether I liked it or not. I had seen enough to know that there was no way out. The power Kris wielded over her family, over me, was too strong, too suffocating. And no matter how much I tried to fight it, I could feel myself being pulled deeper into her world, just like Kim had been. I wasn't sure what I was becoming, but I knew one thing. I wasn't the same person who had walked through that door to work for Kris months ago. And I didn't know if I could ever go back. The pull was growing stronger, and I could feel myself being drawn deeper into Kris's web. Kim was no longer the only one who had changed. I was changing too. The question wasn't whether I could escape anymore. The question was, would I even want to? I couldn't stop myself from searching. The more I watched, the more I felt this dark energy growing inside me, a mixture of fear and curiosity. I couldn't pretend anymore. I had to understand what was happening, what had happened to Kim, and what the hell was going on in this house. Kris was no longer just a manager. She was the orchestrator of something far darker than I had ever imagined. I needed answers, and there was only one place I could look to find them. One evening, when the house was quieter than usual, I found myself walking down a hallway I'd never ventured down before. The mansion felt suffocating, and the walls seemed to pulse with an energy that only intensified as I walked deeper into the corridors. It felt like the house was alive, watching me, but I couldn't stop. I had to know. I passed by a few rooms, the doors ajar, and I saw things that made my stomach churn. Old furniture covered in dust, paintings of people who looked like they'd been forgotten. But it wasn't until I reached the basement that everything clicked. The basement was colder than the rest of the house. The air felt thick, heavy. I could barely see in the dim light, but there was something about it. A presence, something I wasn't meant to find. I shouldn't have gone down there. But I couldn't turn back. Now. Every step felt like I was walking into the heart of whatever darkness Kris had built. The room at the end of the hallway was dark, filled with shelves of old books. But what caught my attention wasn't the dust or the cobwebs. It was the symbols. Strange, unfamiliar symbols etched into the walls. There was something about them that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. As I moved closer to the shelf, I saw it. A thick, leather-bound book, ancient and worn. The moment my fingers touched it, I felt it. A jolt of energy, a sharp tug in my chest. This wasn't just any book. This was the key. I opened it, heart pounding, knowing I was about to uncover something I wasn't prepared for. The pages were filled with strange symbols and writings that made no sense at first. But as I flipped through, a sickening realization hit me. It wasn't just about rituals or spells. It was about power. Dark power. Kris hadn't just been building a career for her children. She had been shaping them into vessels for something ancient, something uncontrollable. I scanned the pages more quickly now, the words blurring together. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized what this was. These were rituals, detailed instructions on how to unlock a person's potential, how to take control of them, body and soul. Kris hadn't just been managing Kim's rise to fame. She had been preparing her for something far darker. She had been preparing her to channel a power that could destroy everything in its path. I felt sick as I flipped to the next page. The rituals weren't just about manipulation, they were about possession. It was about binding a person to something ancient, something beyond this world. And Kris had done it. She had turned Kim into a vessel, a perfect, unfeeling, unstoppable force. It was then that I understood. Kim's transformation wasn't just the result of ambition or fame. It was the result of a ritual of dark power that Kris had tapped into. Kim wasn't just a celebrity. She was the tool for whatever dark force Kris had unleashed. And I was part of it. I had unknowingly helped her create this. I had been complicit in the very thing that was now consuming Kim and me. I heard a sound behind me, a soft step, barely audible. I turned around, my heart stopping in my chest. Kris was standing in the doorway, watching me. Her eyes were cold, calculating. And in that moment, I realized something that terrified me even more than what I had just uncovered. She knew I had found the book. She knew I had seen the truth. "So, you found it," she said. Her voice calm, almost too calm. "You must be wondering what you've really gotten yourself into." I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I felt trapped, like I was caught in a web of my own making. There was no escaping this, no going back to the life I had before. Kris stepped into the room, her eyes never leaving mine. "You're part of this now," she said softly. "Just like Kim. Just like everyone else who's ever worked for me. You've been activated. You've been shaped, just like her." The words hit me like a punch. I wasn't just a bystander. I wasn't just an observer in this dark world Kris had created. I was a part of it, a piece of the puzzle that I had never asked to be a part of. But it didn't matter now. There was no escape, no turning back. Kris smiled then, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You see, it's all been part of the plan. From the very beginning. And now you're mine, just like Kim." I didn't know what to say. My mind was reeling, my thoughts a jumbled mess. I had no way out. I had seen too much, and Kris had already turned me into another one of her creations, just like Kim. I was part of her empire now, part of the darkness, and there was no way out. Kris had trapped me, just like she had trapped Kim. And now, I was starting to understand something terrifying. She had plans for me too. Plans that I couldn't escape. Plans that would change everything. I couldn't breathe. The moment Kris stepped into the room, I knew there was no turning back. I had found the truth, the heart of it all, the rituals, the dark power, the twisted empire she'd built. And now, I was standing in front of her, trapped, unable to run. Her eyes never left mine as she walked closer, the smile on her face almost too perfect. Calm, calculated, like she had been waiting for this moment all along. "I see you've been doing some research," she said, her voice smooth like she was discussing the weather. But I knew better. She wasn't just speaking casually. She knew exactly what I had found, exactly how much I had uncovered. I couldn't move. My legs were like lead, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to say something, do something, but what? What could I say? There was nothing left to say. "I don't understand," I finally whispered, my voice shaky. "What have you done to Kim? What are you doing to her? To me?" Kris's smile only widened. There was no warmth in it, no kindness. just a cold, calculating satisfaction. She tilted her head slightly, studying me, like I was a puzzle she'd already solved. "What I've done to Kim is simple," she replied, her tone almost like a teacher explaining something to a child. "I've unlocked her true potential. And now, she's more than just a celebrity. She's a vessel, a perfect, untouchable vessel of power. And soon, she'll be unstoppable." I swallowed hard, the words sinking into my skin like ice. "And what about me?" I choked out. "What have you done to me? Why did you bring me into this?" Kris's eyes glinted with something dangerous, something I couldn't quite name. "You were always part of the plan. You were always meant to be a part of this." She stepped closer, her voice lowering to a near whisper, as if she were sharing a secret with me that only we could understand. "You think you've been working for me, but the truth is, you've been feeding the machine. You've been helping me shape Kim, helping me build something far more powerful than either of us could imagine." My head was spinning. This couldn't be real. None of it could be real. But the look in Kris's eyes told me otherwise. She wasn't lying. She was telling me the truth, a truth I wasn't ready to hear. "Kim is the key," Kris continued, her voice barely a breath. "She's the vessel. But you're a part of something bigger. You always have been. You've been unknowingly shaping yourself into what I need you to be." I took a step back, feeling the weight of her words press down on me like a physical force. My throat went dry. "What do you want from me?" I managed to whisper. Kris's smile was almost sad now, but there was no pity in it, only satisfaction. "I've already taken everything you had to give," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Now, you're mine. Just like Kim. Just like everyone who's ever worked for me." Her words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't escape them. "You're mine." That was it, wasn't it? Kris had never cared about us as people. She never cared about our lives, our futures. She had simply used us as pieces in her game, a game where she was always the winner. And now that I knew too much, there was no escape, no running, no getting out. "Everything I've done has led to this," Kris continued, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "Kim was the first, and now you too will be part of this empire. You'll be exactly what I need you to be. And when this is all over, the world will belong to us. To me." I felt the weight of her words in my chest, crushing the breath out of me. This wasn't just about fame or power. This was about control. Complete, utter control. Kris wasn't just manipulating her children. She was bending everyone to her will, and I was no exception. I tried to fight it, tried to push the fear down, but it was impossible. I had already seen too much. I had already been pulled too deep. I had become part of this dark world, and there was no way out. I looked at Kim, standing silently beside Kris. She was no longer the woman I had met. She wasn't even a person anymore. She was a vessel, a puppet controlled by Kris's hand. And I was just another puppet, another tool in Kris's hands. But even as I stood there, trapped and suffocating under Kris's power, I realized something else, something terrifying. I wasn't the only one who had changed. Kim wasn't the only one who had become a vessel. I had too. And the worst part was, I hadn't even realized it until now. There was no escaping the truth now. Kris had already won. She had created her empire, and we Kim and I were just the pieces she had carefully chosen. But the worst part wasn't that we were trapped in her game. It was that I didn't know if I wanted to leave. I was becoming something else, something I didn't recognize. The night felt different, thicker, suffocating. The mansion seemed to hold its breath. I could feel it in the air. The final activation was here. Kim stood in the center of the room, still, cold, her eyes empty. She wasn't the Kim I knew anymore. She wasn't even human. She was a vessel for something darker, something Kris had shaped her into. Kris stood beside her, a look of pure satisfaction on her face. "Tonight," she whispered, "the world will see Kim for what she truly is." I wanted to scream, to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. I was part of this now, part of her dark empire. Kris's eyes flicked to me. "You've seen the change in Kim, haven't you?" she asked. "You've seen the power. And now, it's your turn. You're just like her." The words sank in. I wasn't just an observer anymore. I was another part of this, another tool, another vessel for Kris's twisted vision. Kim didn't move. She didn't speak. She was beyond that now. She was nothing more than a conduit for the dark power Kris had unlocked. Kris raised her hands, and the room seemed to pulse with energy. I felt it, the power surging through Kim, through me, through everything. "We've done it," Kris murmured, her voice full of triumph. "She's perfect now, and nothing can stop us." I wanted to run. I wanted to leave, but I knew it was too late. We were all part of this. And now, the world would witness the unstoppable force Kris had created. I was no different than Kim now. We were both vessels, and there was no turning back.